Good morning.
You sound like me this morning. I'm going right in.
The weather sign.
More time being, we have a feeling that's not finished. Morning, Lou.
Good morning, girls. Yeah, they said you would be with something. I cannot. She's fine. You're not in the crazy club then. Good for you then. Someday.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to start out in 1 Kings chapter 16. We'll pick up with verse 25. 1 Kings 16:25. And we got to get going. We got to get done. Sarah didn't take her meds this morning, so she's coming apart. I can't believe somebody's so old that they forgot their meds. I remembered mine just before I walked out the door. I guess it only really gets bad when you take your spouse's meds instead of yours.
You take some of the same ones I do. One of the same ones.
One reminder, we'll repeat it at worship time too. If you are going to want to contribute to the family for Cynthia, give that money to Lou. She will take care of that and has things organized for that and getting it to them where it will be useful. Family had asked for donations instead to a particular organization, and we'll just do it to the family and let them take care of that. I don't know about the people that are coming in together here. We can start more rumors. Let's not do that. 1 Kings 16. We'll pick up in verse 25. David has been gone, has been dead for some 135 years. His and Solomon's kingdom has now split. The northern kingdom of Israel has chosen to go with kings that absolutely reject God. And it seems to be a competition, as you'll notice, 1 Kings 16:25. Omri, the king, did evil in the sight of the Lord and acted more wickedly than all who were before him. He walked in the way of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, in his sins, which he made Israel sin, and provoked the Lord God of Israel with their idols. Boy, that's a great marking on your gravestone, isn't it? Epitaph, you know. You were worse than anybody that ever came before you. I'm not sure that that's impressive, is it? Verse 27 concludes, now the rest of the acts of Omri, and there are not many of them recorded for us in 1 Kings. But the rest of the things that he did and his might that he showed, wonder what that one was all about. Showing off his power, his authority. Isn't it funny how sometimes the people that boast of the most authority are the ones that are completely wrong? If you've never run into that, you've led a sheltered life. It's amazing how many people will try to come and tell you, I bet I could come and give Johnny some helpful information about how to get a train back on the tracks that wouldn't do him a bit of good. The might that he showed. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? Now, that's not reference to what we call the book of Chronicles. This was the official ongoing documents, and almost every nation that we know of had them. It's kind of like the Library of Congress for a country. It gives not only the books and information about what's going on for the country, but it gives the complete authoritative history of everything that had taken place. And again, as I said, we found a few of them in ancient cultures. They have their book of Chronicles, and they list each king and what he did and how great he was, and it does get kind of funny at times. Do you know how many Egyptian records there are in the Egyptian Chronicles of the Kings that tell about their defeat by Israel, or anybody else for that matter? They're completely silent about that. They won't mention the fact that they took an army up and tried to fight against God's people, and nope, that didn't work. There is not a word in there about someone like Moses destroying so much of Pharaoh's army. Not a word. You just don't write those things. And so it would be interesting to read the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. There evidently was one, but you probably couldn't trust everything you read in it. So Omri slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria, and Ahab his son became king in his place. Now you might think that Ahab would be at least a little bit better than his father. I mean, his father is already the worst of all the worst before him. Watch how the author of 1 Kings says it. Verse 29. Ahab the son of Omri became king over Israel in the 38th year of Asa, the king of Judah. And Ahab the son of Omri reigned over Israel in Samaria for 22 years. Ahab the son of Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who had gone before him. You know, at some point you kind of have to ask the question, wow, how bad is it getting? And of course, if you read a little bit about Ahab and Jezebel and begin to realize how bad it actually did get, you begin to understand what the writer is saying. So 1 Kings 16, continue at verse 31 there. It came about as though it had been, and you got to love the wording. You know what subtle jokes are. It's always funny. Somebody slips in a little joke in the conversation, and all of a sudden you 5 minutes later you realize, whoa, I know what they were saying, and you laugh about it. There's a lot of subtlety in the Bible if you stop and think about it. It came about as though it had been a trivial thing for Ahab to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. So what he's saying is this guy was so bad in what he was already doing that he qualified as worse than his father and worse than all of his ancestors for 150 plus years, every king that had been. And now he does something even worse than that. Again, kind of the question, wow, this guy's pretty bad. As though that was a trivial thing to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, he married Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, the king of the Sidonians. Okay. Who's Sidon? Twin cities. Phoenicians. Tyre and Sidon, the two big cities. And by the way, they had hundreds of other little cities inland there. But those, the two main capital cities of the Phoenician Empire. You remember again, Solomon had traded with them, and the king had provided, the Phoenician king had provided not only the wood for the temple, but also had provided ships, and may well have provided sailors as well. Can you imagine a bunch of people that have never been in an ocean-going ship hopping in and saying, okay, let's take this thing all the way around Africa and off to India and do some trading? Would you want to ride with them? Not many of us would be brave enough to ride with them on that big ship if they knew what they were doing. But I tell you, to get on that thing with a crew that doesn't know what they're doing. So where did they get people that knew what they were doing? They had to be trained by the Phoenicians. And they would learn, and maybe a lot of their crews may have been Phoenician, given the peace pact between Phoenicia and Solomon's kingdom. But now, years later, the Phoenician daughter of the king is married off. Jezebel. There's a name. Anybody name their child Jezebel? That's one you hope you never run across, huh? I've actually run across, over the years, someone naming their daughter Jezebel, and I always wondered. It was never anybody I really knew well, but I always wondered, what was that girl like? Not a good choice of names. And he didn't just marry her, he went to serve Baal and worship him. In fact, he erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. So Ahab is building a temple in Samaria dedicated to the god Baal. And then he builds a nice altar. You realize how often Scripture and God pokes fun of false gods. You gotta love the story when the Ark of the Covenant gets taken by the Philistines, don't you? How well does that work? House of Baal. Big old Baal, a big statue, impressive. And they put the Ark of the Covenant in there. Whoa, look, our Baal has defeated the God of the Israelites. And they come back the next morning, and where's Baal? What's he doing? You remember? He's on his face. He's bowing down before the Ark of the Covenant. Honestly, God has a sense of humor. That's hilarious. And you can just picture the Dagon. My bad. Dagon was their god. Dagon is my lips live a life of their own. The Philistines very carefully picked their god up, set him. I'm sure. Can you imagine how they dusted him off, make sure he was all clean and all right and everything? And what happens the next night? Same thing. But not only does he fall down, but he falls apart. I mean, God has a sense of humor, even with the wicked. Boy, you guys just don't get it yet. Let me show you. And he's busted all to pieces. Now, Ahab has built a house for Baal and worshipped him. Erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal that he built in Samaria. And Ahab also made the Asherah. Okay, what's an Asherah? It's a term that pops up a lot in the Old Testament.
It's a pole that signifies a worship place of the goddess Asherah.
Okay, they planted, apparently she was a slender little thing, because all the idols of her and one of the symbols of her worship were a stand of trees. So if you get a bunch of little trees standing up there, young trees standing up there, then, oh, that was Asherah's doing. The other funny thing is she's known as the consort, the girlfriend of Baal. Isn't it hilarious? People make gods in their own image. You remember anything about the Greek and Roman gods? Some of the things they got up to? You know where more than half of their children came from? Having affairs with earthly people. You notice the difference between the real God and the fake gods that people make up? It's shocking. God calls people to high standards. The world's gods call people to low standards, their standards. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. Ahab also made the Asherah, and thus Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel than all the kings of Israel who were before him. What kind of a person is Jezebel? Well, she's really a sweet lady, and she tries to do what she can for the nation, right? Why are you laughing? You must have read some of this, huh?
She was an evil, conniving, and controlling witch.
You have to wonder about this relationship. Who's the boss? You really wonder at times, don't you? Things pop up. If you've read the accounts there in 1 Kings, there are events that happen and you just shake your head and say, dumb old Ahab just doing what he's told. You may remember one time that pops up a little later on. Ahab wants a particularly nice vineyard that he's found over there. How does that work out? The guy that owns it as his inheritance. Probably from the time of Joshua. His family has inherited and kept that land since the time of Joshua. And he's not going to sell it to Ahab. Remember Jezebel's plan?
Launches a plot to accuse him of speaking against the king and the law, and brings up false witnesses to accuse him, and he ends up being executed, and they get the...
Did y'all bring enough for everybody?
That's breakfast.
That's breakfast. You know I wouldn't pick on you. I'll pick on this side for a while. Mark needs to be picked on. Absolutely.
You didn't share his coffee, and I'm a little bit jealous.
At least if you gave me a lollipop, that might keep me a little quieter, huh? Now she's going to get one. Jezebel's plot, her response to Ahab's, and do you remember how she finds Ahab when he comes in from that? He's had his talk with the man. I want your vineyard. I want to buy it. And what's he doing?
Pouting.
He's pouting. He's crying. He's blubbering. No man won't sell me his vineyard. It's hilarious. This is the king. And that's exactly what Jezebel told him. Well, you're the king. You can do what you want. Here, let me show you how. And so she accuses him. By the way, one of the things that if you go back to the law of Moses was absolutely forbidden in the law was being or providing or asking someone to be a false witness. What was the penalty for that? Death. How often does that pop up? And where's the really amazing place that pops up in the New Testament? How did they finally convict Jesus? False witness. The high priest paid a bribe to people to come in and say that Jesus had committed a sin. Wonder how God is going to judge that with all that His Word has said about the subject. It's a scary thing, isn't it? It's a scary thing. And how easy is it to just get somebody to, won't you? Do we not do it in grade school? Don't tell that it was me. Tell the teacher it was somebody else. And we think nothing about it. Jezebel seeks to stamp out every remnant of worship of the real God. She apparently repeatedly sends out edicts to kill anyone of the prophets that are serving God. Some of the prophets, by the way, survive. You know how they survive?
Obadiah hit him in a cave by 50
Okay.
each, 100 of them.
100 by hundreds in a cave. They survive because some God. On the other hand, some of those prophets survive by becoming false prophets. You want to keep your head? You tell the king. We've looked a couple of times recently at lessons. King complains, no, I don't want this prophet. He always says things that I don't like to hear. Haven't you got a prophet that'll tell me what I want to hear?
Go along to get along.
Exactly. How many of the prophets would have gone along? Evidently, some of them did. One man stands out as openly defiant. Now, we know that there are others that are faithful. But one prophet stands out as openly defiant. Elijah. And if you've read the story of Elijah, you know that being openly defiant at times is terrifying. 1 Kings 18, Mount Carmel. Elijah comes out of hiding he's been hiding for a period of time. He comes back to the king. By the way, why was he hiding? You remember?
Fear of Jezebel.
Okay, but he had done something else. He had pronounced a drought on them. There will not be a single drop of rain in this country until I say so. And then he disappeared in the desert. After the first 6 months of drought, after the first year of drought, how much do you suppose Jezebel was expending resources to hunt down that guy? I imagine every soldier in the kingdom that didn't have anything else to do was being sent out looking for Elijah. And finally, he comes in and chooses to speak to Ahab and choose him out royally. And then he says, look, you keep following this false god. Let's make a deal. Okay. Anybody remember the TV show, Let's Make a Deal? Y'all are old. My wife had to tell me about that one, that she had heard about it from her grandparents. I have to go forward for telling those stories, don't I? You think about it. Elijah says, let's make a deal. Here's the deal. You bring your prophets, and he actually asks for Jezebel's prophets. They're Jezebel's prophets. You bring them, the prophets of Baal, and meet me on Mount Carmel. How does that work out?
Not very good for the false prophets or the Baal prophets.
And by the way, again, it's amazing to me. People say you should never make fun of false religions. Have you actually read the Bible? Does God make absolute fun of the ridiculousness of not serving Him? He does. Now, I'm not saying that the first thing you want to do is, if you're going to try to convert somebody, is you walk out in the world and start making fun of them and their God. There's probably a lot better way to do it. But when push comes to shove, and they're ignoring and indeed insulting the real God, you need to realize that there is a real God and there's a fake. And Elijah makes that point pretty bluntly, doesn't he? You remember the agreement, what they were going to do there in 1 Kings 18? How are they going to prove who's the real God?
Calling down fire to consume.
Okay, they've each built an altar. They've got an animal for a sacrifice on it, wood, everything is there. The only thing they don't have is any fire. And whoever's God is real will accept his sacrifice. Seems a reasonable offer, doesn't it?
If your God is the real God, it is.
It's not a problem, is it?
It's a reasonable offer, but if your God is a false God, you got to come on. And they willfully and deliberately set out to have a false God, because they knew what they were doing when he built the temple and they installed Baal.
And if you check, Mount Carmel is over on the coast of the Mediterranean. Samaria is way back in the interior. It's a couple of 100 miles of travel through the mountain roads to get back and forth. How is the God, the little statue in Samaria, going to get out and do anything? I mean, he's locked in his little house. He can't go anywhere and do anything. And again, one of the reminders that's always so good. People will sometimes say, oh, the Jews, you people believe that God lives in your church building, and that the Jews believe that God lived in the temple. Go back and read Solomon's prayer of dedication at that temple. He absolutely understood in his prayer that this temple wasn't to hold God and confine him. Indeed, he would say in his prayer that the whole earth, all of creation, is still too small to contain you. This is just a place to honor you. Probably something we need to remember about a church building. Is it a place to honor God when we gather together? Wherever we gather together as his people, that's a good place to honor him. Whether it's for potluck over at Johnny's house or anything else we do. When we do it as God's people, it's a great place to honor him. Is he there? Jesus promised he would be there.
I think, here I go with the words, I think. Today, do we have our own little Dagons? And how do we acquire our Dagons? Is someone else imposing them on us? Or are we ourselves doing it in placing anything at all in front of God?
You remember how God began the basic commandments to his people? You shall
Not have any God before.
not have any other gods. And how hard is that in regular life?
It can be a challenge.
It's a constant challenge. Anybody but me like to eat? Like to sleep at night without the rain pouring on your head? And how do you do that? It takes money. Is it hard for money not to be our God? I mean, every morning you have to get up and go to work and there's things to do. How hard is it to remember that it's the Lord that matters and not any of that? Jesus even preached a sermon on it, didn't he? He says, oh, you guys worry about where you're going to get something to eat and what you're going to wear. And he said, who takes care of us, really? How many Christians around this world have no idea where their next meal is coming from? Face challenges like that. We need to have the priority of God. And that's really kind of the lesson that Elijah's trying to get across to Ahab and all of the people. And he does he make fun of their God? I mean, it's hilarious. One of the hilarious parts about it is how very careful the English translation is about saying things. Oh, maybe your God, Elijah tells him, oh, maybe your God has gone on a journey, or he's indisposed or something. The Hebrew is actually a little blunter. One of those comments is he's on the toilet. I mean, he's got important things to do. Just, there's just, and he can't hear you. Scream a little louder. And how do the prophets of Baal react to all this? Oh, they're slashing themselves with knives and praying to their God. And Elijah just keeps egging them on. What, is your God deaf or something? Cry a little louder. Honestly, we need to take a look and realize how the false gods are so ridiculous. And it's hard to do. Elijah is very triumphant after that. Indeed, he takes all those prophets of Baal that belonged to Jezebel. What does he do with them after he wins at Mount Carmel? He takes them down to the brook at the foot of the mountain, and he kills them. He slaughters every last one of them. And then he tells the king, hey, the drought is over. You better get for home. It's still a drought. In fact, how many clouds are in the sky? There's not a single cloud in the sky. There hadn't been a cloud in the sky in a couple of years. There's nothing there. And you remember what Elijah's message to Ahab is? Get in your chariot and head for home, because I hear an abundance of rain. It's going to pour on you. And honestly, if you're Ahab, you look around, there's not a single cloud in the sky. This guy's crazy. In fact, you recall the story. Some of these things are really worth reading over and over again. How does Elijah, what's the miracle does he throw down his staff to get it to rain? He prays. James will remind us of Elijah and the power of prayer. He doesn't work a miracle outside the laws of nature. He prays. And of course, he just prays one time for 30 seconds, like we do. And God, I want the winning lotto ticket today. I'm not going to buy one, but I want that $100 million to be mine. And, well, see, there's no real God. God doesn't care. He didn't give me what I asked for. We get ridiculous in our attitude of prayer a lot of times, don't we? And by the way, James talks about that too. Why do we not get an answer to some of our prayers? Because we're asking for the wrong things. And even when we're asking for the right things, he said, you're not doing it in faith. Oh, God, you didn't give me that $100 million yesterday, so I know you won't answer my prayer today for something that I really need. Wow. Sometimes we're the ones that need to be poked fun at for our attitudes toward God. Elijah goes up and he prays. And what happens? There's still not a drop of rain. There's not even a cloud on the horizon. He goes back up a second time and prays the Lord. After the first time failed, how hard does he pray in the second time? God, you're going to make me look bad here. You said this is what we're supposed to do. Help me. I told Ahab, I sent him home, said it's going to be raining, and there's not even a cloud. Goes back the third time. You remember how big the cloud is? Stretch out your hand over the sea there, and that cloud disappears behind your hand. And at that point, Elijah runs for town himself. Come on. We got some pretty good rain last night. Do you realize that for the last 2 days before that rain, it's been cloudy and looked like rain, and hardly more than the only drops we'd get would be enough to dirty your windscreen when you're out driving. And a sky covered with clouds that all look like rain, and not a drop. This guy's got a perfectly blue sky and a cloud that he can cover up with his hand, and he starts running for cover. By the way, how fast of a runner was Elijah? Do you remember?
Outrun Ahab's chariot.
Outran Ahab's chariot. He caught up to him and passed him. I mean, even when I was running, I don't think I want to run against a guy like that. That's impressive. We had a friend years ago that had been in, 4 Olympics as a distance runner, and did well in all 4 Olympics. Think about that. Every 4 years, that's over 16 with the training over 20 years of being an Olympic after Olympic after Olympic to run 26 miles. I don't know about you, but I always found that long distance running was anything longer than 100 yards. If it's 200 yards or 250 yards, 200 meters, that's for the birds. You got to be crazy to run that far. And Elijah outruns Ahab's chariot. How well does that work? What's the first thing that when Jezebel hears about all that's happened? What does she say?
Well, that's God's do to me. Like you did to them.
I'm going to dismember that prophet of God just like he did to my prophets. I'm going to kill him and cut him, and he's not going to be good for dog meat. He's going to be chopped so small. And, you know, Elijah's a great life to read, too. We struggle with being faithful to God at times, don't we? And having doubts. Fortunately, Elijah, I mean, here's a man that God takes directly to heaven, never passes through death, and this man never had a doubt a single moment in his life, did he? You need to go back and read Elijah's life, don't you? When Jezebel tells him, I'm going to chop you into dog meat, he's terrified. Why doesn't he stand there and say, you just try it? I just showed your priest and your God Baal what the real God can do. I'll do that to you too.
Because God didn't tell him he could.
And he runs away.
He had to run away.
He's terrified.
He has to be.
He runs away and he sulks. He wants to die. He complains to God. God, why are you treating me this way? I'm not saying don't feel bad. We should feel bad when we act that way and we feel that way. But I am saying that understand that God's people, even the most faithful of God's people, have been there and done that. By the way, remember something the Hebrew writer says about Jesus? He was tempted in a few little things, you know, like 3 temptations out in the desert, and never had any problems anymore in his life, right? Said he was tempted in all things like we are. You suppose Jesus had days that he just wanted to quit and give it up? Lord, these people are so dumb. They haven't listened to or understood a single word I've said. I'm going back. That's it. I'm done here on earth. He had to be discouraged. Another good story, it's worth reading. His discussion with Peter. When the crowds, the disciples are fleeing from Jesus because, he's teaching things that are too hard. And he turns to the disciples, to the 12, and he asks them a simple question: will you leave me too? You know, we can read that ignorantly and say, well, Jesus says there, knowing exactly who's going to stay and exactly how everything. Did he know things? He sure did. But when Jesus says those words, do you hear his voice cracking? Do you see the tears in his eye? Will you leave me too? Because if you don't see those things, then the writer of Hebrews is a liar, and Jesus was never tempted in anything like we face temptation. I'm going to go with God knowing what he's talking about. And Jesus was tempted. He was heartbroken at the things that he saw. Just like Elijah, just like us. It's not a sin to get discouraged. It's not a sin to even be really, really, really discouraged and want to quit. It's only a sin when you quit and walk away. But you know, that's hard, isn't it? It really is. By the way, if Jesus talked about how easy it was to get to heaven, he says, you know, it's a really broad way and wide gate, and everybody goes there that wants to. If it was easy, everybody would do it. It's hard because God wants those that will really make the effort. We're out of time. Keep reading ahead in 1 Kings 21 and 22. A lot more interesting things that happen there. We'll look a little more at Ahab and Jezebel next week. Thank you. Always a little suspicious now.